Hello, welcome to this week's episode of How's the Market, Pensacola. Hope you got out and about this past weekend. There was a bunch of stuff going on. If you didn't hear, if you lived under a rock or something and didn't hear, it was like the 48th or 49th annual Shrimp Festival over in Gulf Shores. That is always a good time. So that lasted all weekend, and I know there was a bunch of people that went. The Dragon Boat races here in Pensacola, this was like their 6th annual. I think they had over 40 or 42 teams register, and that's always kind of a cool thing, especially some of the designs of those boats. Man, those things are crazy. And I've had a first this weekend. My wife and I attended a wedding of one of our coworkers this weekend, and I've never seen a camel at a wedding. I was wondering if the camel was going to be in the wedding, but that was a first. Here's a photo. Yeah, camel wedding. It was because we had the wedding out at the Sowell Ranch over in Santa Rosa County. Gorgeous place, and if you hadn't been over there during Christmas, they have this nice little drive-through. Keep an eye on that. I'll put a link in the show notes. But hey, we're not here to talk about weddings, camels, or dragons, although that might make another good episode. Today, we're here to talk about real estate. Let's go.
I'm a man on a mission.
My mission is to help people break through all the noise out there and
Don't need no permission.
I want to help you get to actual truth. Don't you just want the truth? All right, so as we do every week, for those who have not seen the show, I always put this slide up first. And what the slide says is if we have 6 to 7 months worth of inventory, it is considered a neutral market. If we have greater than 7 months, it's considered a buyer's market. Less than 6 months is considered a seller's market. What it doesn't say, I always try and clarify this every week. If you have more than 9 months, that's considered a hyper buyer's market. If you have less than 3 months, it's a hyper seller's market. The marketing strategies for the seller changes, as does the buyer. So let's see where we are. We're starting in Santa Rosa this week, and it's interesting, all the way up to $500,000. And this is, again, if you haven't seen the show yet, over here is the list price. Over here is the month's inventory. So you can see all the way up to $500,000 is a hyper seller's market. So anything over $500,000 is a hyper seller's market right now. We're seeing inventory kind of drop. Again, I'm not saying there's not property there. There's a real big price point between $2 and $250. But if you look, I got 154,000 between 2 and 2, 154,000, 154 properties between 2 and 250 that are active. But I've only got 2 months worth of inventory. So the appetite for that is still very, very strong. I got 123 properties between 250 and 300. But again, 2.1 months worth of inventory. So everything is really, really hyper sellers right now. And one of the things I want to point out, because I've had some buyers trying some stuff lately, and I've tried to educate a little bit, but I think there's some misconception out there. I want you guys to look, especially in these hyper sellers markets. This is the list to sale ratio, meaning they're listed at 250. They may take 2,500 off, but I've seen people at 250 want to write an offer at 235. And it's just not going. And they're actually, upsetting sellers to the point where they're not wanting to negotiate. So you need to be prepared, especially when it comes to price. We want to talk about also terms. You maybe want to negotiate more on terms than you do on price in this hyper seller's market. Let's see what the rest of the price points are. Looks like even 550 is considered a seller's market. So 5 to 550 is considered a seller's market, but as you can see, the ratio starts to go down a little bit. Okay, so they'll go 98 or maybe even 97%. So now you're starting to talk about $15,000 off of a $500,000 property, and that's okay. But again, not ridiculous. Not ridiculous. Let's see. 550 to 600 is they have it yellow, but that's, according to our first slide, that's actually considered a buyer's market, just barely over. 6 to 650 is the true definition of a neutral market. There is literally 6 months inventory there. So, again, pricing changes if you're the seller. Negotiations changes if you're the buyer. That's why I put this information out every week. 650 to 700, definitely a hyper buyer's market. You can get aggressive there, but look, they're still selling at 98%. What is closing at 98%. All right. Excuse me. And then over 700,000. Again, they've got it yellow. That's technically a buyer's market, but it's so close to a neutral that I can see it going yellow to a neutral market, but we'll call it a buyer's market just barely. And your ratios here are just crazy because this is everything over 700,000, so it's tough for the data to show up. All right, that's Santa Rosa County. Let's take a look at Escambia. Where are we at? Looks like everything under 300, not 500, but everything under 300 is considered a hyper seller's market. Everything up to 450 is still considered a seller's market. But if you looked at this last week, this was almost 4%, if I remember correctly. And this was up over 7.5, close to 8, because this was that weird pocket. 4 to 450 was a seller's market, very close to a hyper seller's market, and 450 to 500 was a buyer's market, very close to a hyper buyer's market. But I've seen that now come down. This is actually considered a neutral market, the 450 to 500. But this has gone down a little as well. And that's fascinating to me because I know I have a client that actually was sitting right at this particular price point, right at 450. And he watched the show last week and they called me and they said, listen, that's a buyer's market. Let's drop down a bucket. So we dropped down into this bucket. So I was expecting this to go up. The fact this actually went down some is interesting. I'm just wondering if some people are just pulling things off the market. But look at this, the 450 to 500 is down to a neutral and not a buyer's or anywhere close to a hyper buyer's. But the little anomaly has moved up $50,000 because between 450 and 500, neutral market. 450 to or 400 to 450, almost a hyper seller's market. But then we get up here to 500 and 550 hyper buyers. So 450 to 500 is a neutral, almost a seller's, but 500 to 550 is a hyper buyers. And if you look at 550 to 600, that's a hyper buyers as well. So it's a little strange, that 450 to 500 block. It used to be this one for the last few weeks. Now it looks like it's this block right here. So again, if you have to sell in this area, you're going to have to just market differently. If you're a seller, you're just going to have to market differently. If you're a buyer, look at this, 550 to 600, they're getting 96% of list. So that may be where you can get a little extra on price and terms, all right? It's also interesting, the 6 to 650 is flat neutral. And then everything else is a hyper buyers in Escambia County. So that's kind of your numbers for the week. All right, that's interesting phenomenon that's happening in Escambia County and Santa Rosa County, man. You guys, everything over 500,000 or under 500,000, everything is just crazy. And that makes sense. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of properties over there. A lot of people wanting to get over there. I think because of schools. I think they like the schools over there. Anyways, I know I got quite a few contracts in Santa Rosa County as we speak. Okay. I don't give you any fluff. I don't give you any sales pitch. I just try and give you data so you guys can make decisions for you and yours. If you're looking to do anything over the next 12 months, I've got a guide, whether you're going to buy or sell. I've got a guide. I just want to give you a free guide. Okay, right after this, at the end of this show, it'll actually show you a link. And then I'll put the link in the show notes as well to get a free seller's guide, to get a free buyer's guide. And if you plan on doing anything over the next 12 months, take advantage of the guide and let's chat. Let's just chat. I'm not the type person that's going to come out and say, you need to list tomorrow. Matter of fact, I have 7 people right now that are going to sell with me in the spring, but they talk to me in September and October because we've got a 6-month plan now. Now we have the time to actually go out and get everything done. I've got 2 more meetings this week of people that are wanting to sell first quarter, but they're wanting to set things up now as we get through the holidays. So if you're thinking about doing anything, give me a shout. Again, these are just the numbers. So I did that just for you and yours. Have a great week.
I'm a man on a mission.
My mission is to help people break through all the noise out there and
Don't need no permission.
I want to help you get to actual truth. Don't you just want